Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. I'm Way-T Lightheart, and we are back in the saddle again for the Awesome Health Podcast with Bioptimizers, and I am pumped. I'm excited today. We have Karen Martel from Kamloops, another fellow Canadian here in British Columbia. She's going to talk about her story around, this is something that's really important for women because we're going to get into something talking about weight loss resistance. We're going to talk about weight loss plateaus. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts and where people get caught up in the mistakes, the common elements that, this happens for a lot of people. They're dieting along. They don't know what's going. Everything was working great. And then they stop. And instead of getting the right information, they actually do what sets them up for failure. So this is a really important thing. If you've been struggling with weight loss, if you're wondering about maybe your hormones aren't working the same way, Karen is an expert on these things, and we're going to dive deep into this today. Karen, welcome to the call.
Wade, T. Don't all you listeners want to know what the T stands for? He's very elusive about it. Just so you know, he doesn't tell it. He doesn't share it. So anyway, happy to be here, Wade.
Thanks for joining us today. So let's start with your story. So, I mean, I see you. We did an interview last week on your show. You're so bright and fit and full of energy, and you're a mom and you got a business. I mean, you're really saying it and doing it all. But was it always that way?
It sure wasn't. No, I since very young, I struggled with weight, with body image stuff. I was severely bulimic in high school, and I kind of recovered from that throughout my 20s, but, still abused my body with lots of, not so great things that we do in our 20s, and cleaned myself up. Was at a healthy weight, felt pretty good about it, had my first child, and about a year after having her, I started gaining weight. And I was—
How old were you?
I was probably in my, let's see, okay, how old am I now? So I was 31. Right. So when I had her, so it was about 32 when it started happening. So around there, like right after she was born. So I was thinking, okay, well, I got to get in shape. So I did what every other woman does, which is, I started doing the boot camps. I hired a personal trainer. I was going through the diets like crazy, thinking like, okay, if it's not this, it's got to be that. So I went raw for a while. I was vegetarian. I did Atkins. So I was like one extreme to the next. I did juicing. This was all within like a 2-year period. I was just like, something has to click here, right? And working out harder than I'd ever worked out before. So I was probably in the best shape of my life in that sense. Was training every day, and I only continued to gain weight. It was super frustrating.
What did that? I think you share a common element there. What did that feel like?
Well, I'd always because of what I went through as a teenager, I was always very wrapped up with my looks and how I looked, and was always so afraid of gaining weight. Like it was like my biggest fear that always sat at the back of my head, because what had happened, my mom put me on birth control when I was 13.
Wow.
And I gained 20 pounds in a year.
Wow.
And that was shock. Like as a teenager, I was just like, what's happening to my body? So not only was that was when I was at the end, I was just turning 14 when she did that. So between 14 and 16, I was really heavy. And just suddenly when I went from being this very pretty teenage girl to be packing on all this weight and thinking I was losing my mind too, because the birth control messed up my head so bad. So I was severely depressed. And my mom was this fitness guru who ran Nutrisystem. Remember Nutrisystem back in the day? It was a weight loss center.
Yeah.
So here I have this mother that's supposed to know everything about weight loss. And so what she did was she said, you need to start going to the gym with me. You need to start eating less. And which just totally screwed me up. Nobody thought it was the birth control pill. And as soon as I went off it, I lost the weight. But the detriment had already happened, right?
So the psychological fear and that kind of led to the bulimia.
Totally. So then I was
see this a lot
all
with young women, and this is really important because I think not just for the women that are listening to this, but it's for mothers and fathers who have daughters particularly because it's a very sensitive time,
Ugh.
especially in those teenage years, because you're upregulating all these other hormones, and then they're introducing birth control, which is a steroid essentially. It's this is a major hormone. It's not like steroid to get big in the Olympics, but it exerts these characteristics that can really dramatically alter the hormones and this negative association psychology. So I want you to talk a little bit about that. What was that like?
Oh, it was terrible. And if not many people know how horrible the birth control pill is for you to begin with, right? Back then it was high amounts of estrogen. I mean, if I didn't take the birth control at the same time every day, I would vomit because it would make me feel so sick. It wrecks your microbiome. I mean, it was terrible. I would never put a teenage girl on birth control ever in my life. I wouldn't. I will never do that to my daughter because I think makes you so sick. And some people can handle it better than others. I mean, I was an exception for sure, but it still is harming everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. And I've done a couple of podcasts on it on my own podcast talking about the birth control pill. But yeah, it wasn't good. And so it set me up. That whole thing just set me up for having a really bad relationship with my body until I figured it out, right? Because basically in the end, I did figure it out because I finally had to say, okay, why am I continuing to gain weight when I'm doing everything right? And I'm a total researcher. And I thought, you know what, I got to figure this out for myself because there's nothing out there that's talking about this. Because I really, truly was a very good eater. I don't have sugar addiction. I was eating what I thought was right, which was like whole grains. I was eating lots of vegetables. I was juicing and eating my oats for breakfast. Like I was doing really everything right in the eyes.
I was doing everything right, or all the right things.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things about the dietary industry is not understanding how the food's going into this hormonal environment. And hormones influence your brain, and your brain influences hormone. They're interrelated in the relation of the microbiome. So how old were you when you went back off the birth control pill?
I went back off of it when I was about 16, and I dropped the weight instantly.
Right.
Instantly, it was back to my normal self. When I really was like, I was ready to go tell my mom I honestly had the thought, I think I'm a crazy person and I need to be put in an insane asylum. That's what I thought back then, which obviously we don't call them insane asylums anymore.
Right.
But then I remember clearly thinking, I'm losing my mind. And I'm gained all this weight, like just crying and being like, this is terrible. And not my doctor. Nobody thought to say, oh, maybe it's the birth control pill that she's on.
Wow.
So after that, I never went on it again.
Wow. So then what happened? So we've got that. Then there's a gap. There's some years you probably partied and did all this stuff at 20 years old. So put some abuse on the body, put some miles on the body.
Yeah, which was a big part of my recovery, because when I finally tried to say, okay, what needs to happen here? Like, why am I continuing to gain weight? Obviously, what's out there is wrong. I need to figure out what else is causing this weight gain that's suddenly happening in my body. And I felt like my body was broken. I felt like it was defying me. I was like, what is wrong with me? And I knew it on an intuitive level, there's something wrong. And we'll talk about what it was, but one of the big pieces, Wade, was I had to go back and I had to heal. It was like all that crap was stuffed down inside that I had gone through as a teenager, that I had gone through in my 20s with the alcohol abuse, drug abuse. I wasn't kind to myself. I never respected my body. And it came to a head during that time of those couple years after my daughter was born, where I had to go, okay, I gotta heal this stuff. I don't know if you guys swear on your podcast. I need to heal this crap, and I need to figure out, I need to love myself again. I need to respect my body again. And it was really because I needed to do it because I saw that my daughter would be like me if I didn't. And so having my kid was like a big wake up call to go, if I don't figure this out now, she's going to go down the same road. and she's not going to like her body, and she's going to disrespect herself, and she's going to get into situations that I don't want her to be in.
Right.
That
right.
I was in. Right.
That's a very powerful, it's a powerful kind of aha moment when you're there, because it's not just about you. It's about understanding that there's a psychological pattern that got set up years before and got masked by a variety of different things. So, and I see this all the time, and it's masked by high performance achievement. It's masked by excessive partying or drinking or, drugging and all that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's other strange sociological. It's interesting how we need an outlet for these kind of programs. And then when you bring another child into the world, there's a massive shift in your biochemistry and also your perspective in life.
Yes. Yeah. And I think too, that's a really important piece for your listeners to hear, is if they are struggling with their health or their weight in any way, shape, or form, that's a big piece of it, is to find leverage, like find something, because sometimes it's not enough to do it for ourselves. Sometimes we have to do it for a different reason, like find leverage, whether that be your kids, your partner, something that's going to help you to reach, to keep going and to get to that goal that you're striving for.
So let's I'm going to go to the 2 years. So you had your daughter. You're kind of struggling along again at 2 years, right? And you're like, God, I thought I had this licked, and then here we are again. So what how did you get out of this?
Well, and I, just so you know too, like I had quit drinking the year my daughter was, like while I was pregnant, right before I had her, actually, before I got pregnant, I had already quit. So here I was, clean, sober, eating really well, working out, and continuing to gain weight. I also got started to get severe migraines, horrible PMS, my bloating. I looked like I was constantly 3 months pregnant. I had skin rashes, and these all developed around the same time. So I was getting all of these weird symptoms. So it wasn't just that I was gaining weight, other things were starting to happen that I was like, there's something not right here. What's going on? So I had talked to my naturopath about it, and I said, what do I do here? And he actually said, why don't you check out the ketogenic diet? And this was, so this is 10 years ago. And so back then, no one in Canada had heard of a ketogenic diet. If they did, it was for epilepsy, right? And so I went online, I started researching, and I actually came across Mark's Daily Apple, which is a paleo-based site. And I bought his book, and I started the paleo diet. And it was interesting because a lot of my symptoms went away. Like a lot of the bloating had gone down. I felt like my energy was so much better. My blood sugar stabilized. And I was like, wow, I think this is how I need to eat. I think I found my diet. And to this day, I still eat paleo, and I still swear this is my diet. However, back then, I went strict paleo and didn't lose a pound. So, but I knew that was my diet. So that's a first, really important piece, is we all do need to find a way that we're gonna eat for us. So
when you switched to this paleo diet background and some of the things went away, do you feel that was because of you were eliminating some of the contaminants that were, causing these inflammatory responses that people 100%. Associate with weight gain? But it's not actually a food issue. It's an inflammatory response issue.
Yeah, because my body composition changed. I wasn't so inflamed, right? So taking out those grains was one of the best. I always had weird blood sugar issues. So taking those out, it just immediately stabilized my blood sugar. And all those inflammatory grains and beans and things that I was eating were removed. And it just obviously my gut was very leaky at the time. So all these things, it was like, okay, I found the diet, right? Still didn't lose the weight. So I had to go farther. So I got my hormones checked. And here I am, I'm 33.
Right.
Thinking, I don't have hormone problems, but I'll rule it out. And sure enough, I had major hormonal dysfunction at 33. My cortisol was super high. My estrogen was super high. My progesterone was super low. My DHEA was low. So basically I was stressing my body out way more than I thought I was, which was making it near impossible for me to lose weight. The estrogen dominance was creating a lot of the PMS issues that I was having, as well as the weight gain that I was having. So it was like a huge wake-up call, because here I was working out hard, and that was the exact wrong thing for me to be doing at that time. And I was super smart about it. A lot of people can't just quit working out. And I did. And I just started doing yoga. I was like, that's it. I'm going to change my body. I'm going to change this.
So the yoga was kind of taking you out of that cortisol, the overproduction of cortisol. Because I think a lot of women, or a lot of men too, don't realize it. As you get older, your hormones change, is that maybe you can't hit the gym as much, or you're under a lot of external pressures of running a family, finances, children, relationships. All these things are under pressure, which create these cortisol responses. And a lot of people are running on the caffeine train, right? That they're using that as a way to smack their adrenals some more because they're trying to survive life. Was those some of the things that were happening for you during this time?
Yeah, I would never have thought I was a stressed out person. Ever. So it was really good to see it on paper, because I was just doing what everybody else is doing in society. I was just living my life, doing what everyone's doing. And it's
a stressed out society.
And it's an extremely stressed out society. And a lot of people don't realize that what you think is normal is not normal to your body. Keeping yourself in that state of up, up, up all the time, not to mention like all the artificial lighting, the lack of sleep that we're having. You're working out all the time. I was raising a daughter by myself. I was running my business by myself. But to me, I was like, well, this is just normal. This is what everyone does. And it was not normal for my body. Some people, like I said, some people can take it. Other people can't. I couldn't take it.
And this is essentially, it's your second hormonal crisis, if you will. You had the first one.
Always sensitive to the hormones. Yes.
Right. So, and that's, I think, an important part. There's some people who just are more sensitive to these hormonal fluctuations.
Yes. And it's genetics, a lot of it.
Yeah. And so tell me, how did you come to that conclusion? And then what did you do? Because you're kind of stuck here at this plateau point. So we talked about, people run into these weight loss resistance and they don't realize it's not diet, it's not exercise. Mm-hmm. It's their hormones, and oftentimes their lifestyle connected to it. So how did you get your way out of that?
Well, it took a while. And so it's not a quick fix. This is where it's not pretty anymore. This doesn't sell very well, which is, these things take time. There is no quick fix. There's no quick diet to go on. There's no quick exercise program to go on. You need to take your time. And it's a lifelong thing. Like, I still work on it to this day. I just did my hormone. I do my hormone testing once a year, every year.
What one do you use?
I do a saliva test.
Yep.
Yeah. I do the ZRT. I have yet to do the urine one, because I always do the saliva, because saliva is better for cortisol testing. Yep. And I do want to see that. But Dutch testing is also very good. Either one. It's great to get both if you can. But
because you're getting different data, a little bit different data on both the ones.
On both, yes. Yeah. So I've always done saliva. And so at that time, that's what I had done, was saliva testing. So I did a number of different things. I changed my lifestyle. I started doing the yoga. I started taking more time for myself. I started, asking for help, which women don't do. I started to reach out to more family members to help me with my kid, and just, start taking better care of myself. And a big thing that I did was I started doing therapy. I started going to a counselor as well as an energy healer, because I knew at that time I had to get to the emotional garbage that was also stopping me from releasing the weight and just connecting with my body. And I knew I had to recover from that. So it was a combination. Like, I had to work on all these different elements over the next few years. And I mean, I definitely started to lose the weight within, I don't know, probably like 6 months or so, but it took some time before I stabilized. And it was like, okay, now this is my happy weight. And I stayed at the same weight then for probably, 6-7 years. Had my second child, and then things went haywire again. Right. I don't know what it is with these kids, but I had my son when I was 37.
Right.
And before him, I had always stayed at the same weight, had him, and then started having hormonal dysfunction after him. And it was about a year or two afterwards. And then I discovered I actually had a thyroid problem. So I was like, oh, okay. So that was probably part of it back then too.
Sure.
And then it got worse after I had him, which is very common. So a lot of women will say, well, it's ever since I had my children, or ever since I was pregnant, I just can't get back to the way I used to look. And a lot of it is that we're very nutrient deficient. So we go into these pregnancies already in lack. We have, our babies suck up everything from us that we have. They take everything first. And then we're left nutrient deprived. they say we should be waiting like 4 years between our kids in order to replenish all the nutrients that are lost because we're so nutrient deficient right now, which then are messing with our hormones. This is why we're seeing so much postpartum depression. All of this has to do with why it can be, thyroid can get screwed up. All of these things can happen from pregnancy. So you're not crazy to think that.
Well, I think you bring up something. There's so much there to unpack, and we won't get into time to kind of go through all this stuff, but I think you're touching on a lot of really salient points. One thing that I've noticed, because I've seen this a lot, and we have to put into context a couple of things.
Yeah.
First and foremost, a lot of women have entered into birth control at an earlier age than people, if you look back, a couple of generations ago, were having families at 18, 19, 20 years old. And if you go back like a few hundred years ago, we're talking as teenagers, in these cascades. And there was no hormones, and there was no chemical agents, and there was no preservatives and dyes. And we didn't have blue light. We didn't have all these factors that are leading to these endocrine stressors, hormonal responses. And we've got all the benefits of the modern world, but we have a whole new set of challenges. The other thing is, and you bring up a point, is you're having children at a lot older than typically happened earlier.
Yes.
And as you see today, there's twofold to that. You see a lot of women, particularly young girls, who are under these, what I would say, cosmetic ideals, when they really shouldn't be messing with their diets and stuff that much at a younger age. They should, be concentrating on activity and self-esteem and these type of things, because they're supposed to carry a little bit more body fat when you're in your younger years. And yet they're comparing themselves to these Photoshops on Facebook or whatever. And then they set up these psychological pressures, and then they start dieting, and they get into these exercise programs. Sometimes they enter fitness competitions, and they're taking their body fat down to levels they're not supposed to. And then there's a recoil, and then they have kids, and, later on in their 30s, and you get in this blowout zone. What does a woman do if they've gone through this circus? They're in this right now. There's women listening to this that are saying, oh my God, that's just like me. What the heck do I do?
First and foremost, have your hormones checked. I don't care what age you are, because we're seeing it younger and younger. It seems to be that absolutely 100% if you're over the age of 35. 35 and up, it's like, no matter who you are, if you're having problems with weight loss and you can't lose weight very well, it's your hormones. Like 95% of the time it's hormonal. So you have to address that. 100% you have to address that first and foremost. The gut, of course, as you talk about lots weight, has a ton to do with it as well. So there's these 4 little markers that I always think every woman needs to check, which is first and foremost your hormones. You need to then address your digestive system, because that will mess up your hormones. So if you've got any sort of gut infection, I had found out back then that I had blastocystis hominis, which is a parasite. So that one you can't even, I don't even think you can get rid of it, but it was causing probably a lot of the leaky gut things that was happening back then. So that was contributing. So you have to do with digestion, stress. Yes, that's hormonal, but it's also lifestyle stress, right? Like, what can you do in your environment to take the load off your body? Getting rid of plastic containers is huge. Like, just that simple move, getting rid of the chemicals in your house, the synthetic smells.
I saw an article the other day that said the average person consumes enough plastic to make a credit card every week.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I was just like, well, that's a crazy visual. I'm eating a credit card every week in plastic. The average person is crazy, right?
That is crazy. And plastics are major hormone disruptors, right? It's terrible. And so just, getting rid of those things. Sleep is huge. Women don't realize that if you're lacking in sleep, it's going to be one of the biggest impacts on your weight because of what it's doing to your hormonal system. Right. It drives up hunger, it drives up cortisol, which drives up blood sugar. So just going through each of those markers, and then also, of course, diet. Like, you have to find the diet that's going to work for your body at this time. Now, I lean towards the primal-based diets, whether that's keto, paleo, autoimmune paleo. I've actually created my own primal diet that kind of incorporates everything that I talk about to help women to lose weight without harming their hormonal system. Mm-hmm. That has to do with, we've got some intermittent fasting in it. We do carb cycling so that your body can't get used to what it is that you're eating, right? Because if you go too low carb for too long, it's going to hurt your adrenals.
Yeah.
We've already discussed this, that women were stressed out. So hurting your adrenal system by going super low carb is you're just perpetuating the problem. Could work in the beginning because of what it's doing for your blood sugar, but eventually it's hard on the adrenal system, hard on your thyroid. We all have thyroid dysfunction now as well. So all of these things, is really important to eat in a certain way that's going to help whatever issues that you're being faced with.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip, rapid cheat meal relief. Research shows that cheat meals can actually be an effective way to boost your metabolism. One key weight loss hormone, leptin, can be increased by up to 30% following a cheat meal. The challenge with the cheat meals is that all those extra calories and lower food quality can be hard to digest, which means you could be totally sidelined with a food coma after big cheat meals. The solution is to take strong digestive enzymes like masszymes, which will help rapidly digest and break down the extra food. 3 to 5 capsules before or right after your cheat meal can make a huge difference in how you feel following the cheat meal. If it's a cheat day with multiple large meals, you might want to go up to 10 capsules or higher to help you power through all that food. To save 10% on masszymes, go to masszymes.com. That's MASSZYMES.com and enter the code CHEAT10 at checkout.
You brought up one thing about thyroid, and a little side note, because I've been talking about this for almost 15 years in the water business, and people know that iodine is a big requirement of proper thyroid function for the conversion of T3 and T4. But what a lot of people don't know is that chlorine and fluoride are 2 halogen element chemicals, which actually bond onto the thyroid much easier. And if you have chlorine and fluoride in your drinking water, and most people have at least chlorine, you need to get this stuff out, because this is one of the big, I've seen so many women with thyroid issues by 35, and I do believe one of the big contributors. So get shower filters, get water filters, test them regularly, make sure you're getting the chlorine and the fluoride out of your system, because these are major, major hormonal disruptors that you'd never think of just drinking water or bathing or taking showers or swimming in chlorinated pools. And I know that sounds, people go, really, it's that bad? But the CDC actually released obesity rates correlated with fluorine consumption in the United States. And it's crazy, the correlative data on those 2 things. So, and again, women, much more sensitive because of the thyroid and estrogen, and then all these high stress levels, because having kids and trying to work and do all these things, because now you have to be a super mom, right? I mean, you got to be everything, right? I mean, this is the pressure that women are facing in today's world that they didn't face before.
Yeah, and with the thyroid weight, like that is one thing that is a serious epidemic right now. If you have weight loss resistance, you need to be paying to get tested for your thyroid. Do not, like, if you're in Canada, you cannot get a thyroid panel unless your TSH is out of range. So your doctor will only test.
So where does someone go? Where does someone go?
So you can get them online. I sell them. I sell blood spot test kits for thyroid. So you can just do it in the comforts of your own home, send it into a lab. You can, and it's relatively inexpensive. I think my thyroid panel is maybe $200 or something. You can go to a naturopath to do it. If you already have a naturopath, get it done. You want your free T3, free T4, a reverse T3, and the 2 antibodies for thyroid. And do not take your TSH as being an indicator of whether or not you have a thyroid problem. Another thing you can do from testing from your own home is taking your body temperature. So taking your basal body temperature first thing in the morning as well as in the afternoon, and see what your temperature is at. You want to be at a 98.6 on average in the afternoon, or 37 degrees if you're here in Celsius. Anything under that is an indication that your metabolism is not working up to snuff. Okay. So just doing that alone it's like the best tool. And I would say at least 80 to 90% of women that I work with have an underfunctioning thyroid. And that's for many reasons. We're not going to get into that. It's a whole nother podcast. But It is huge. And everyone always says, oh yeah, my doctor tells me my thyroid's fine. Well, you won't get tested for it here in Canada unless you have a problem with the TSH, which that's why mine went undetected for as long as it did. All my numbers were great, but my T3 was underactive.
So when you started doing your own testing, how long did it take you to kind of figure this all out, go through this process? You got into yoga and stuff. What typically did that take for you? And then what are you seeing with your practice?
As far as like how long does it take to fix it, or
yeah, exactly.
On average, about a year usually. If somebody right off the bat takes a hormone test and you know what you're working with and you can start addressing it, then it's about a year to where they really feel like, on average, where it's like, okay, this is good. I think I found my place, right? I found what's working for me. My hormones are getting better. Hormones going to go in a 3-month cycle. So within 3 months, you know, on a program or on some right supplements or some bioidentical hormones, women can feel better really, really quickly within a few cycles. But it's about that year. Cortisol, if it was really low, it can take up to 2 years to heal the adrenal system.
Yeah, depending on how far a person's gone.
Yeah. And everybody's different, right? It all depends on kind of what's coming at you too. It's like you can take all the supplements and take the bioidentical hormones, but are you still drinking every week? And are you, have you got rid of the plastics? Have you been sleeping better? Have you, like those things have such an impact on your hormones that you have to do all of it.
Well, this is a lot. So let's talk. So how does, I know you work primarily with women. Is that?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I do work with some men. They just don't seem to have the problems that we do.
Right. We have a different set of problems.
Guys are easy.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your clients, the people that you help, how you set them up and what's the steps that people take to kind of get going. So if you can walk us through that, because I think this is something that women need to know about. Even if they're not there yet, they can look on the preventative side as well, because it's coming.
Yes.
This conversation is coming for virtually every single woman.
Yes.
It's coming at maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 40, but it's coming.
It's coming. 100%.
So if you can get this in the bud, even if you're not struggling, and if you are, there's hope. So who are you helping, and how does this whole process work?
So I do help. My age range, definitely who I'm attracting, is anywhere from 35 to usually around 60 is who I see. So women that are definitely hitting that hormonal transition where they're going, oh my gosh, what's happening? A lot of perimenopausal women. So perimenopause is before you hit menopause, where estrogen goes really high, progesterone starts going low, and you start gaining weight and feeling crazy in your head. So I get a lot of those women coming in. So I do one-on-one coaching sessions where you have access to hormonal testing through me. If you can't afford that, then we go with symptoms, of course, right? And I create a meal plan that works for that person. So wherever I think they are, if they've got lots of inflammation, I may do anti-inflammatory. I really try to meet that person where they're at. And then I have a really great group option, which is group coaching. It is a weight loss and hormone balancing membership. So you can access it for as long as you need it. So it continues. You get that weekly meal plan that I was talking about, where we incorporate fasting, we incorporate carb cycling and low carb diets. We've got lots of fiber in it. We've got all these things, all these elements into the meal plan that will help a woman to not hit a weight loss plateau, as well as continuing to lose weight and balance her hormones through the diet. And then we have supplement suggestions. There's programs, like little mini programs on the inside for each of the hormone dysfunctions. So you can get, the supplement recommendations, the lifestyle recommendations, depending on what hormone dysfunction they have. I've got an excellent hormone quiz that everybody can take if you go over to KarenMartel.com. It's right on the front. It'll say, take the hormone quiz, and you just click on it and it'll bring you to the page where you can take a very comprehensive hormone quiz that just goes through 5 of the top we have a lot of hormones, but those are the 5 top that I see in my practice. So it'll tell you which one is the most dominant one that you can start to work on first, and I'll give you some tools to get started on it.
Now, do you work with people long distance as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah, most of my clients are remote. Like I do all over the world. I just talked to a girl in Kuwait.
And I think one of the things, and I'm a big advocate of coaching, particularly for virtually everything. I mean, in today's world, how do you become great at anything, because the pressure of time is so deep? But I want to just make a little shout out there how critical that relationship is, because if you're going to your friends or you're going to your peers, or even if you're going to your family doctor, you're probably going to stay lost. Unless you have some real steady guidance, especially when you're in the crazy brain, as I call it. You know what I mean? Like, you're in the crazy brain, and it just feels so hopeless, or you feel like you're the only one that this is happening to, or somehow you're this thing. And I think a lot of women struggle with this. And so you can kind of walk people off the ledge, and, there is hope, there is help.
Yeah. And people get really frustrated because they go to their doctor and they're like, well, why can't I just get it through my doctor? And it's like, we have to let go of the fact that that's where our doctors can help us, because they can't. They don't know about hormones. Even endocrinologists, they have very little knowledge about actually how to fix the hormonal system. It's crazy, but I can't tell you how many clients I have that are like, yeah, I went to my endocrinologist and they said that I don't have a thyroid problem, when it was so clear that they did have a thyroid problem. Like, things like that. You need to just realize that your doctor's not a weight loss expert. That's not what they're there for. They're great for other things, and I can tell you what to go get tested through that's free with them, but a lot of it you can't. And so you don't rely on them for that.
I've always said that the medical industry, unfortunately, takes some of our brightest and most motivated people and takes them through an exorbitant and detailed training, but only, it's like they have a toolbox with 3 tools. They have a hammer, they have a saw, and they have a screwdriver. And that's it. And that's all they legally can operate in. Even if they do know, they're not even able to comment outside of that. And that's where having coaching and naturopathic doctors, and, as you talked about, spiritual healers and things like that, and psychologists oftentimes, to unlock the psychological, emotional components.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that side of the piece, because you touched on it, but you haven't got into that. What did you learn, particularly on maybe the counseling and also on the spiritual healing? Because a lot of people don't want to talk about this. I know. I have a deep and long relationship with my spiritual practice. I don't talk about it probably as much as I should. I'm going to do more episodes. But I think it's really important about connecting the who we are internally, our soul, if you will, as well as our psychology. What are some of the things that you've uncovered in that journey, and what typically do women uncover in those journeys?
A lot of garbage that happened when you were little. And I know that we don't like to think about that kind of stuff. I remember always thinking like, oh, I know what happened to me as a kid. I don't need to deal with it. Like, I understand that probably wasn't the healthiest thing for me at that time, but oh, well, I'm fine now. I wasn't fine. Right. So I really did have to go back, and to have a person shine light on it and say, what you went through wasn't right. What that person did to me wasn't right. Yeah. And it was like permission to be like, oh my gosh, poor me, poor that little girl that had to go through that. And it was so important to have that other person say that for me. And that was the talk therapy. And then with the spiritual therapy, I actually ended up dropping the counseling after about a year or 2. And then I saw this spiritual healer for probably 8 years, and I still see her occasionally because she was so profound in my journey. And for me, it was she did lots of energy healing and just could see where I was blocked with my energy. She could kind of get to the root of things without, she was very intuitive. So she could tell you kind of what was going on and at that time. And it was really interesting. So she helped me to get rid of this old stagnant pain that was out of my body. And if you're not a spiritual person, that's probably really hard for you to understand, but we're all energy, right? We have chakras. When we don't deal with pain, whether that be emotional, physical, psychological pain, you store it in your body. Every illness has an emotional root cause. So whether that illness is obesity, whether it's chronic migraines, whether it's stomach aches, whether it's cancer, there is an emotional root cause to that. And I really, truly believe it. And I see it time and time again in my clinic. Super, super, really powerful. And I think traditionally, if you look throughout human history,
there was a deeper association and connection with kind of spirituality that in a more secular world, a more digital world, we've moved away into some, I call new ageisms and sometimes. And I think there's a reason that humanity has cultivated these practices and principles throughout history, through various forms or various understanding bases of time, but understanding our role as souls inside a human experience and this stuff is a very, very powerful experience, because I think just that having that background allows us to look at maybe some painful components of our lives or things that we buried, repressed, or suppressed, and say, okay, that's something that happened to me, but it doesn't need to define me. And that's kind of where the healing is. Or I can use this actually as a tool for deeper understanding of my relationship with this thing we call life.
Yes. It's all there to teach us something, right? And so if you're struggling with a health problem or you're overweight, try and instead of looking outside of yourself for the answer, really look to and ask yourself, what is this pain trying to tell me? Because it's usually your body trying to get your attention somewhere. So there's a lot of really great tools online for it. Like you can look up Louise Hay. I think that
you can heal yourself.
Yeah, and so you could just look up like chronic back pain, emotional root cause, and it's going to tell you kind of what goes along with that. Like I remember for me, it was like ovarian cysts were something about creativity, and I've always suffered with ovarian cysts, and I was stifling my creativity, and so and now that I've gone into this new field of work, I don't have them anymore.
Interesting.
Right? So there's always going to be an emotional root cause. And even if this sounds really woo-woo to you, explore it. And we really, as women and men, when we hit about 40 usually is the age, but 40 and up, we start to feel unsettled and we don't know where that's coming from. And it's a very subconscious thing, but we start to look around us going, isn't there more to life than this? And women especially, it's a time in our life where we've raised the kid, we've had our children, we've got our job, we're either keeping or getting rid of our husbands at this point. Like those people don't need us like they used to. And so it's the first time in our lives that we put the direction on ourselves and say, okay, well, what do I want?
Right.
And it's a spiritual shift. There's a spiritual shift. There's a psychological shift for both men and women during that time, as well as physical shift. Your hormones are going to start changing, even for men. Men go through the menopause. But your priorities change. And so it's really important to find something for you and start taking care of you at this time, because your body needs you to, hormonally and spiritually and psychologically.
Great stuff, Karen. How do people reach you? How do they find out about this hormone test? How do they get access to you for coaching? I think you're providing some great insight and some powerful things that you can help people with. Tell us all the deets.
KarenMartel.com. That's it.
And they can go on there right now and take a free hormone test, I guess.
They can go on there right now, take the free hormone quiz. You can join the membership program. It's open for registration right now. I don't know when this one's airing, so it might be closed, but there's that. I've got meal plans. I sell meal plans, weekly meal plans as well. So there's something for every level of person on my site pretty much. So KarenMartel.com, and you can find me at Karen Martel Nutrition on Instagram and Facebook.
Karen, this has been just such an awesome episode, and something I really appreciate you sharing, that you've transformed your own life. You're helping other people out in the world, and you're providing some insight on some very, very important issues. So if you're a lady out there listening, or you're a man out there listening, tell your ladies about this. Reach out to Karen. Take that quiz. I mean, it's a quick and easy quiz. It gets you started and give you an opportunity to maybe go outside of the channels that you've been in that might help you overcome the struggles you're having. So thanks so much for joining us today, Karen. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Another awesome episode of the Awesome Health Podcast. Wait till Lightheart come back each and every week, because we got special guests for you that are going to help you feel awesome. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, Wade.
God bless.
At Bioptimizers, our mission is to fix digestion. And a cornerstone of digestion is gut flora. P3OM is our patented probiotic formula. In fact, we call it the Navy SEALs of probiotics. You see, strong proteolytic or protein digesting activity is paramount to having a healthy gut flora. And of course, P3OM provides that. The good news is unlike weaker probiotics, P3OM survives the digestion process. What it does is it basically multiplies the good guys while protecting you against pathogens, or what some people call the bad guys. P3OM really helps to rebuild your digestion. And what that allows you to do is to maximize nutrient uptake, energy, and metabolism. To find out more of how P3OM can help you, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.